Because of my patient's autism, it was extremely difficult for us to engage in introspective conversations. During our first visit, she came over to my desk to show me extremely sadistic and graphic pornographic videos on her phone. She stood next to me, hunched over, hyperfixated on the videos as she rocked back and forth. She told me during one session that she watched horror and porn movies growing up because they were the only ones available in her house. So welcome back to the channel today, everyone. Recently, another health provider stepped forward to blow the whistle on what is happening in the name of gender-affirming care, which I would say isn't care at all, to be honest, but this time she's coming from the mental health professional side. So Tamara Pietzke wrote in the Free Press this week about her experience as a therapist who has now quit her job at Multicare Behavioral Health Network in Washington State after basically being told to approve all gender transitions and don't ask questions. In the article, she discussed how she was kind of like a sheltered therapist, in my opinion. She said last September was the first time that she really learned about gender-affirming care and what it was, and the harmful side effects that it can be caused to kids. And when she was doing her own research, that then horrified her as to the state of what they were being asked to do as therapists. She went on to basically describe being gaslit during the training on the subject when she simply asked the question, why do 70 to 80% of kids who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria have prior mental health diagnoses? She was then accused of spreading misinformation about trans kids and being hostile, and even bringing politics into the discussion. And this is what we've been talking about on this channel for a long time. It's a cult, and a lot of therapists are either in the cult or they're afraid of being canceled. Or now we're finding out that some just don't even know. Some are actually not even aware of what's going on in these gender clinics in and of themselves, right? Like, she was told by her supervisor that that was an inappropriate question. You know, when we always did, training, anywhere I've been, there's always been this adage that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And so ask them because you're trying to get more clarification. And yet, this seemed to be a trend as she started to deal with this even more, and with how her supervisors and everybody else in the field treated the situation. So she went on to describe her first patient, who was 11 years old, and I read a little bit of the article at the beginning of this episode on that patient because she had a severe history of trauma, and she had never really expressed gender issues to her as her therapist treating her. But then she was brought forward that they wanted her to sign a letter diagnosing her with gender dysphoria so she could then go on testosterone. And when she said she wasn't comfortable issuing a child a letter diagnosing her with gender dysphoria because she had concerns that the child was not actually dysphoric, but her issues were caused by her trauma and her severe autism, her supervisor told her there was no clinical basis to suggest gender dysphoria is caused by trauma. Excuse me, what? I mean, it could have been that she didn't actually have dysphoria, and she just didn't want to be a girl because she had been sexually assaulted multiple times, and this was a trauma response to this. That seems to make sense. Like, why are other therapists, not even questioning this? This is a huge look into the state of the community that's supposed to be treating the brain, but they're writing off trauma responses to gender dysphoria. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, but then, seriously, what is the point of requiring a therapist letter if you are simply going to just affirm them either way, and you're not allowed to basically question them? It would be then a needless step, right? But there is a reason, because therapists need to make sure that they're doing what's right for their patients. And it really did seem like Tamara's boss was more worried about being politically correct than what was actually in the best interest of the patient. So in the email that her supervisor had sent back to her after she said that she wasn't really she was concerned about actually, writing this letter or signing this letter for this child because she didn't know if she had actual gender dysphoria. Her supervisor basically reprimanded her for not pencil whipping the document. And she first received a scolding for not using woke language, such as assigned female at birth, but then was told to basically check her biases. Listen. My honest suggestion would be to examine your personal beliefs and biases about trans kids in particular. I don't mean this with judgment at all. It's important that we all do this. Everyone carries beliefs and biases, myself included, around everything. As the saying goes, if you have a brain, you have biases. It's inevitable. It's important that we determine to what extent those beliefs and biases are affecting our clinical judgment, the type of research that we accept, and how we practice. And since she wouldn't just pencil whip the document, they transferred her patient to someone who would. I mean, that is insane. Like, they tried to coerce her by saying that the liability isn't on them, but the person who's prescribing the hormones as well, which wouldn't actually be true because it's her as a therapist letter that allows the doctor to prescribe HRT in the first place. Like, doctors use those letters to protect them. It's not the other way around. So Tamara went on to describe 2 more patients in similar situations that, activists will tell us never happen with kids. And I think it's because I've heard so many heartbreaking stories on this subject. It doesn't surprise me. However, there was one, and it was actually shocking to hear how another therapist reacted when she asked for advice for a patient who said they identified it as a dog. Basically, the other therapist brushed it off, said it wasn't a big deal, not something to try and fix, and if peeing in a litter box makes them happy, then so be it. Like, it's your job to walk through the issues that's causing your patients to think that they are a dog. Like, if this doesn't show the state of the mental health community, I don't know what does, right? You would think that would be a concern as a mental health professional that your patient is identifying in that way. I get it. People are going to go, well, Sarah, you're trans. How can you say that you shouldn't be automatically affirmed? And I would say that, a therapist's job is to make sure that, what's going on with their patient is the proper care. I would also say that I don't actually think I'm a woman. I know I'm a male. I don't believe in the, born in the wrong body. I do believe that my brain is functioning differently that makes me want to live life as a woman. And so to ease my anxiety there, I do. But, do these therapists now think that, trans species is okay? How about, trans ageism? Because, the first patient that I talked about here, she had talked about age regressing to a point where she was watching Teletubbies and, using a pacifier to satisfy anxiety stuff. And so is trans ageism okay? And so I think it's going to take many more brave souls coming out to change the course of our mental health professions, of our medical community. And if you wonder why I don't have much faith in our mental health community, this is it. When we hear these stories, this makes me push back, and I really think that we have deep-seated issues happening in these institutions. And honestly, Tamara is the type of therapist that I would probably want to go to now. And anyone who doesn't follow blindly with the herd, and I hope many of you will look at somebody like Tamara and, support those who are brave enough to do the right thing. She's actually looking out for what's best for her patients and not what is politically correct. And it seems many in the field are captured by woke ideology. And, I think the lawsuits are the only thing that's really going to correct the mental health issues, with the therapist, that aren't doing their job, because there's not really laws that you can pass to say, therapists have to treat their patients this way. I mean, and that would be a violation of not only HIPAA but also the 14th Amendment. So there's not really laws you can do, but lawsuits are the only way that you're going to fix the deep-seated issues in the mental health community. When stuff like this comes out, I think we need to expose, how bad like these people are treating their patients. This is medical malpractice. What these mental health providers are doing by just pencil whipping documents, and it actually it does seem to go counter to what the recommendations and laws would be. Like, again, why even have a therapist letter if you're just going to pencil whip them and you think that there's no other reasons that people would say that they're trans other than that they have gender dysphoria? Like, if that's the case, then there's no reason to have that. But there is a reason, because trauma, other comorbidities, and all that other stuff that we talked about and that we always talk about, it does affect that, and it would, stand to reason as to why people would come out as trans. But with that, I do encourage you to go over and support the Free Press, read the whole article, which is linked in the description, and tell me what you think in the comment section below. Click that like and subscribe button. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.